And that's how it goes. You never ever know about the NWO. Deep behind enemy lines for November 30th, 2030. Yeah, top headline. Move over. Sunspot alert. Major solar flare and coronal mass ejection update. And another, whoops, I should have not said that. We'll got to go back and rewind. More earth changes and geopolitical upheaval. And another update to the New World Order from the No Link News Desk. Move over, harp tards. You'll not see this earthquake prediction or earthquake news from Dumbass Doomsday Disinfo Dutchie's Magic 3D Earthquake Crystal Ball first. So in case you miss it, or you want to wait around for sloppy seconds from Dumbass Disinfo Doomsday Dutchie, let's get to the science of things this morning. It's just a little after 7 a.m. and a little bit of rain occurring and snow in the forecast. So, well, yeah. Well, let's get to the science of things today. Yeah. Back in 1998, I was listening to the radio show Coast to Coast AM with Art Bell and heard Mitch Petros as a guest shock and rock the global warming Agenda 21 community with his space weather earthquake forecast equation. And it went something like this. Sunspots trigger solar flares. Sunspots trigger solar flares. Solar flares trigger charged particles, highly electricized energy, radioactive energy. Cosmic rays are ejected from the sunspots in the form of solar flares. Solar flares trigger the Earth's magnetic field to weaken. A weakened Earth's magnetic field triggers ocean stream currents to shift and jet stream currents to shift. Shifting jet stream currents and shifting ocean stream currents trigger extreme weather and human disruption. And then Mitch Petros revised his space weather earthquake forecast equation in 2012 to include the highly charged particles that decrease the magnetic field, cause an increase in outer core convection. So basically it boils down to this. The cosmic rays travel through Earth and heat the Earth's core. The Earth's core, as the Earth heats up, it expands. And when the Earth cools down, it shrinks like a raisin. So when the Earth heats up, you have an earthquake, you have an increase of earthquakes and volcanoes. And when it cools, when the Earth's mantle cools, the outer core returns to its convection. This is how the space weather forecast works. Doomsday Dumbass Disinfo Dutchie. So let's get back to the story today in the headlines that, I don't think you possibly were aware of this, dumbass Doomsday Disinfo Dutchie. So I thought we'd bring you all up to speed, all you harp-tards out there that are still following the harp-tard conspiracy realm. Well, it never amazes me, but let's bring you up to speed. Nope, that's not what I want. Ooh. What did I do with it? No. This is it right here. Here's what I'm looking for. Got the wrong one. Didn't I? No, I didn't. Wait a minute. All right, give me a second. I'm having trouble with trying to find my media source here. Here it is. Man, now I can transition over and get the right scene in here. Here we go. So, bring you up to speed. A major solar flare released from the sun yesterday on November 29th at 1311 Universal Time. Earth orbiting satellites detected one of the biggest solar flares in more than 3 years. And NASA's Solar Dynamic Observatory recorded this extreme ultraviolet movie. So here you get to see what the blast looked like. Man, this thing was amazing. Absolutely incredible. Caught us all off guard, that's for sure. There's no doubt about this massive freaking coronal mass ejection. Man, if this thing was Earth-directed, we could have been sent back almost to the Ice Age. Caveman days. X-rays and ultraviolet radiation from the flare ionize the top of Earth's atmosphere. See, HAARP, TARDS, this is what HAARP was designed for, to study the aurora borealis from solar wind activity. And this blast is located behind the sun's eastern limb. So let's go here and bring it up to into the mix. Drop this in, drop this out, throw this up. And you'll see here on the left, right about in the middle there is where we have sunspot. Sunspot 2786. Ham radio operators and mariners may have noticed strange propagation effects at frequencies below 20 megahertz, with some transmissions below 10 megahertz completely extinguished. So, once again, if this solar flare was Earth-directed, what many are claiming here is that it could have fried the electrical grid of our planet or caused major disruptions in satellites and other electronic instruments. Many fear that an electromagnetic pulse could wipe out the electrical grid for years to come, as many are preparing for a major solar flare event like the one yesterday. Remarkably, this flare was even bigger than it seems. The blast site is located just behind the sun's eastern limb. All right, let's go back here. So 2786 is now Earth, pointed directly at Earth. Possibly, will it produce any major solar flares? We do not know yet. So keep an eye out for solar flare activity from sunspot 2786, which can be visible by the naked eye if you want to look and stare at the sun this morning when it rises. But over on the left side on the horizon of the sphere is another sunspot. And it's now rotating around that in the next few days is possibly could produce even more dramatic solar flare activity. As you see, the reconnected lines of the electromagnetic connection. You see the filaments. Man, you can see those filaments. And that bright absolute blast. It's absolutely incredible. Maybe I should move this over just a little better so you can see this solar flare and its filaments, magnetic, reconnecting its magnetic filaments. And then the bright blast of light. So while we study this latest major solar flare event, I just want to take you here to spaceweather.com. Space Weather Prediction Center, and show you that this was nearly an X-class solar flare event yesterday. And it's tapered off over the last 24 hours. Well, it is interesting to note that we're now entering a proton flux, Dutchie. Doomsday, dumbass disinfo, Dutchie. Talk about seismic activity. Well, here we go. Proton flux seismic activity. What is a proton flux? I'd like to explain that to all you out there, because obviously it doesn't got anything to do with HAARP. Because you HAARP-tards got your head stuffed up your ass thinking that HAARP causes earthquakes. Well, I'm here to debunk all that. Proton fluxes. What we got is a solar particle event going on, Dutchie. What is a solar particle event? Well, let's go to Wikipedia and explain this to the dumbass doomsday disinfo Dutchie who can't forecast earthquakes precisely. A solar particle event or solar proton event prompt occurs when particles emitted from the sun become accelerated either close to the sun during a flare or interplanetary space by coronal mass ejection shock waves. Here's the shock waves that I want to point out to dumbass disinfo doomsday Dutchie. These shock waves can trigger earthquakes, Dutchie. These particles cause multiple effects. They can penetrate the Earth's magnetic field and cause the ionization in the ionosphere for you HAARP-tards out there. The effect is similar to the aurora events, and except these protons rather than electrons involved, these energetic protons are significant radiation hazard to spacecraft and astronauts. So, I've been studying this for quite a few years, and I'm going to bring you all up to speed right now. The proton flux occurring and hitting Earth's atmosphere right now may not be off the charts yet, but I have not seen a change in the proton particles hitting Earth's ionosphere for many years. Maybe 2017. So, there you go. Just now, Earth's getting whacked with a shock wave, dumbass Dutchie. So you all want to be out prepared for what major earthquakes could occur here around the planet. So I'm just saying, yeah, we now are going to go back and look for the planetary estimated arrival of the solar flare, looking for a geomagnetic event which will trigger solar flares. But this is what you got to worry about is the charged particles, Dutchie, and the shock wave from them charged particles. And here's where we're going to go to next. The real-time solar wind speeds have went from 350 kilometers a second hold on a second, have went from nearly 350 kilometers a second a day ago to nearly 550 kilometers a second right now, as you see indicated in the purple line. 527 kilometers a second. We also have seen the increase of the temperature over the last few hours increase also. So with the density of solar winds and the speeds and the temperatures, wow, we're getting rocked right now geomagnetically. Look at this intense fluctuation in the solar wind deviations. Yeah. Okay. What's that got to do? Well, let's see if there's any flux in the magnometers. Let's see what the geomagnetic 3-day forecast says. Geomagnetic activity possible through November 2nd. Active, minor storms, moderate storms, and strong extreme storms. It doesn't give any indication there. 010 details. So the fact is, as we are now watching a solar flare occur, what many need to pay attention to when we get hit and whacked with a major shock wave is the fact that the electric power grid and consequently the power to your home and businesses could be disrupted by space weather. One of the greatest discoveries of the 19th century was the realization that the varying magnetic field is able to produce an electric current in a conducting wire. So basically, when these charged particle shock waves hit Earth's magnetic field, it causes a magnetic flux passing through the Earth's core. And this is proportional to the current that is generated through and around a loop. And when this loop occurs, you're going to have the reconnection magnetic where an earthquake is possible. Natural electric current systems, which vary in time, can be found inside the Earth, in the oceans, and even in the Earth's crust. The rock consists of magnetic material, and where this constitutes included positively charged ions, negatively charged electrons, which move in and around a myriad of complicated ways. Many of these upper atmospheric current systems are constantly present and modulate in a regular way in a response to the rotation of the Earth, the gravitational pull of the moon, and the slow variation of the solar radiation over the course of the solar cycle. And that is, yeah, that is the name of Mitch Batros' space weather business now. How about that? So if any of you are all wanting to get up to speed, Science of Cycles by Mitch Batros is currently studying and researching the effects of solar radiation on the Earth's planet that causes space weather. You might expect early inventors of the telegraph systems, they didn't realize that the electrical currents, no, they didn't realize the electrical currents are constantly present and modulate in regular ways in response to the rotation of the Earth. So as these current systems can greatly enhance and exhibit rapid changes in time and space, a phenomenon typically referred to as a geomagnetic storm. Geomagnetic storms, in turn, are caused by disturbances that propagate away from the sun, travel through interplanetary space, and interact with Earth's space environment. I know Doomsday Dumbass Disinfo Dutchie tries to explain his psychobabble earthquake predictions in this sort of way, but he obviously is not studying the electrical impacts that solar flares cause and assessing the impact of geomagnetic storms on the electric power grid that involves a number of considerations. So how do you check and see the impact and saturation of the electrical fields? Well, NASA, Dutchie, already has a tool for that. Yeah, here it is. And we're going to show you when we get whacked with a major solar flare that's going to wipe out the power grids. This electrical model will indicate how intense the electric geomagnetic storm impact is. Okay, let's play it. Let's show you what we're talking about here. Yeah, we're going to see electrical charge impacts up along the East Coast. As you can see, most of the impact is where the city lights are. Yeah. So once again, this geoelectric field is a measure of the induction hazard to artificial conductors such as electric power lines that results from geomagnetic activity and can be used to estimate the amount of current induced by integrating along the conducting pathway. Yeah. Imagine when the power grids go out, they're going to follow the power lines, Dutchie. I thought you were saying something about they were triggering earthquakes at one time. Well, here you go. Here's a chart to chart and track your electric grid field, Dutchie, to see whether or not your earthquake fantasy forecasts are accurate or not. But who am I to point out? You're a dumbass, Doomsday Dutchie. Because you obviously don't know the electrical effects on the Earth's magnetic field. Very well. Well, no data. Still no data. I don't know what happened to it. It's offline, but Juggernaut had best magnetic magnometer that I missed. Man, if I could use the data from this magnometer, I could pinpoint when you're going to have a major earthquake. There's no doubt about it. When that magnetic reconnect occurs. So until then, I have to rely on less detailed magnometers for my research to track the change in Earth space and environment. I mean, the global warming nuts out there still want me to believe that I'm the one causing global warming, but as you see here, as of 9:30 a.m., the impact of plasma, particles, and radioactive outputs from the sun triggered a major flux in the current deviation level. With remote sensors at locations across Alaska, Geophysical and Institute Magnometer Array senses the interactions between the solar wind and Earth's magnetosphere. They also sense the currents associated with auroras to determine the strength and the location. To help scientists in Geophysical Institute's at Poker Flat research range to predict which auroras are worth launching scientific sounding rockets into the ionosphere. So as all this was put together by HAARP, Dutchie, several magnometers at HAARP are not provided anymore for research. Thanks to dumbasses like Doomsday Dutchie, who used his disinformation to whip up a bunch of hysteria over the HAARP-caused earthquake fantasy. Now we're showing debunk him completely. That geomagnetic activity leads to earthquakes, not an increase in seismic activity. Oh, Dutchie, you got your head stuffed up your ass. You don't know much about shit, do you? Let's generate this latest interactive mapping, 3D map. Let's just show you how, the real-time results of magnetic fluctuations occurring on the planet. Yep. These are hourly values used in geomagnetic activity and how geomagnetic activity is mapped out at magnometer stations around the planet. All right. Pretty much wraps up today's latest update on the solar flare activity and the sunspot around the back side of the sun that produced the largest solar flare seen in years. I'll just give you a heads up that sunspot may not be visible, but in the next few days, if it produced nearly an X-class event, we could possibly see in the forecast X-class solar flares, Earth-directed X-class solar flares later this week. I'm Never Know Patriot Broadcasting and Liberty Tree Radio field reporter number 8510. And as always, God bless the Republic. Death to the New World Order. We are on the march. The empire is on the run. We shall prevail.